Have a QR code you want to share? Why not embed it into an AI-generated image using QR Monster? In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how you can run this for free on your own computer using an open source web UI, and how you can access this programmatically using the API that they provide. Let's get started. So to understand how this works, let's get into the models that underlie QR Monster. So the overall model that's being run is something called Stable Diffusion. It was released in 2022, and it's a text-to-image model that allows you to describe an image, and the model will output an image that fits your description. On top of Stable Diffusion, there's been something released called ControlNet, which allows you to put an additional constraint on the image. And these constraints could be something like poses, facial structure, and other geometrically related features. But to get a sense of how ControlNet works, there are different types of models to describe which physical features you would like to constrain your image generation by. Two of the models I have here are Canny Edge and Human Pose. When you select a ControlNet model such as Canny Edge, and then you apply that to your input image here, it outputs this map, which is going to describe the constraints that the output image should contain. For the Human Pose ControlNet model, you can insert an image of a human in a certain pose, and it outputs a map that will be used to constrain the prompt further. In the map here, you can see that it's describing the edges of the dog, and it's combining that with the prompt cute dog, and the output is a dog in the same angle as the input image was. And in the human pose example, you can give the ControlNet map, which describes the pose of the human, combine that with the prompt chef in the kitchen, and it outputs a chef in the kitchen in the same pose as the input image. So the ControlNet map and the prompt are working together to give you the AI generated image. On top of ControlNet, there's been a new model released called QR Code Monster, and that's what we're going to be working with today. What QR Monster looks like is it's a model from ControlNet that, given the image, which is a QR code, it'll take that, combine that with the prompt, and embed your QR code in an AI-generated image, which can be scannable. Let's get started with installing Stable Diffusion, which powers all of these models. The go-to Stable Diffusion web UI is from Automatic1111, and you can download it on the GitHub repo here. So if you navigate to the wiki page, the MacBook here that I'm running M1 on is Apple Silicon. And over here, I will now follow the instructions listed here. So I'm going to be running brew install, and then I'm going to git clone this into a repo on my computer. I've already done that. The next step is to download a Stable Diffusion model. They recommend installing the ones listed below. You can also opt for open source models, and a great way to find them is to go to the civitai.com webpage and search by models. I'm specifically using a model called I Can't Believe It's Not Photography, but there are many other models that you can choose from, and it gives you the theme of how Stable Diffusion is going to create your image. And the way you would integrate a model like this or any of the others is you would click download, and then you would navigate to the web UI that you cloned. It should be called Stable Diffusion Web UI, and inside of that you would move down to the models folder, and then you would navigate to Stable Diffusion, and then you would place the model here. You would go back to your command line, and then you would write /webui.sh. Great. So now we have the open source web UI running on our computer, and we can see that the Stable Diffusion model that I downloaded is here. And you can test it by just placing a text prompt and hitting generate, and your image should generate below. Let's generate an image called blue sky. And the sampling steps here dictates how many steps you want to run. Typically, the more steps you have, it's going to run longer, but it's going to have more attempts at drawing your image, and it should look nicer or more complete. Let's just run it with 20. And there we go. It has generated a blue sky from my text prompt. Now, the next thing we need to do is install ControlNet. And that is going to be an extension to this Stable Diffusion web UI. The specific GitHub repo to install SD Web UI ControlNet, and I will have this link below as well. And in here, you're going to navigate down to the installation instructions. So what you're going to do is you're going to open the Extensions tab, go to Install URL, and then you're going to enter this, which refers to this repo. Let's do that. So you're going to go to the Extensions tab, hit Install from URL, and then you're going to place that repo here. And then you're going to hit Install. Now once you've done that, you're going to then see, if you scroll down below, this little tab here called ControlNet. And when you open it, you're going to be able to then input an image here, which is going to be used to create the ControlNet map that constrains the output, as we went over in the beginning. Now that we have ControlNet installed as an extension, we now need to install the ControlNet model that we want to use. And we're going to be using the QR monster model. To install the QR code monster model, we're going to navigate to the Hugging Face repository for QR monster. This will be linked below. You're going to go to Files, and then they now recommend to use the V2 version. So we're going to click on that, and then there's going to be two files here that you're going to want to download. First is this one. It's going to end in a .safe tensors, and you can see that if you hover over it. And then the one below it, it's going to end in a .yaml. So to download this, you're going to just hit that little download icon. So if we navigate back to the web UI directory, we're going to go inside of this, but instead of going to models, we're going to go to extensions, because ControlNet is an extension that we added onto the web UI. Here we're going to go to this, which is SD Web UI ControlNet, which is the ControlNet extension. And then in here, we're going to go to models. You're going to place both the safe tensors and the .yaml file here. After you do that and reset ControlNet, if you go down to the model here, you're going to be able to select QR code monster. Let me introduce some of the parameters that we have to play around with when generating a QR code. So I'm going to enter a prompt. I'm going to keep the sampling steps the same. I'm going to go over here and make sure we activate ControlNet by opening this tab. In here, I'm going to be able to drop the QR code I want to embed. Then, you need to make sure that you select the preprocessor and that it's going to be invert from white background and black line. And finally, make sure that you select the model is QR code monster. Finally, hit generate. So our output image just finished generating, and you can see that it took my prompt, the blue sky with clouds, and it combined it with the QR code to create this AI generated image. So the first thing you can adjust to make it more QR code like is if you go down here to select control weight, and if we shift control rate more from 1 to the right, it'll decide to be more like the ControlNet map. So if it goes all the way to 2, it will pretty much only pay attention to the ControlNet map. But if we put it all the way to 0, it'll only pay attention to the prompt. A good balance I found is setting it to something like 1.3. And let's redo this image. And there we go. This looks more like a QR code, but still retains a bit of the features of the image. What the ending control step does is it decides when the ControlNet map stops being applied to the image, and it just listens to the prompt. It's better to set that less than 1. On this image here, we set the ending control step to 1. So the output image is going to look very much like a QR code. But when I set the ending control step to 0.65, it means that 65% of the way, it stops applying the ControlNet map to the image, and the prompt can start being more creative with what is already given in the diagram. The next recommended setting to turn on is Hi.res fix. And what this is going to do is going to make your image have a higher resolution on output. Right now it's off, but when I click the tab, you're going to see the options for the Hi.res fix, and seeing the options means that it's on. Right now, the steps are set to 0, and that doesn't mean that there's going to be no steps. It actually means that it's going to have as many steps for the high resolution as there are steps in the sampling. So 0 means it's just going to follow whatever's here. So it's going to be 20. I'm going to keep it at 0. And the rest of this you can leave as is. It is highly recommended to turn this on, as it will make your image have more resolution, meaning that the QR code will be easier to read from scanners. I generated an image here with the prompt, the Amazon rainforest, and with Hi.res off, it had an output of about 500 kilobytes. But when I turn it on, you can see that the image is much more detailed, and the output is 2 megabytes. Now you should be set up to embed your own QR codes into an AI generated image. And the final part of this video is I'm going to show you how you can run this on the API. So say that you had multiple prompts that you wanted to run with the same settings, or you wanted to run the same prompt with different combinations of settings to get the right image output. You may not want to be using the UI, as you're going to have to be clicking for each one of those combinations. I figured out the exact parameters that you need to set in order to automatically run what we just did using the API. That you're going to need to add the API flag to the command line argument to run it. So let's do that. So I'm going to stop my web UI and I'm going to run the same command, but I'm also going to append the API flag to it. And this is going to allow you to now send API requests to the Stable Diffusion model running. And in order to easily run this API, I made a Streamlit application that you can use to set all the settings that we just went over and have a different combinations of them combined with different prompts. Let's run that right now. So I have this repo cloned on my computer. And before you run it, just make sure that you install the libraries in the requirements.txt. The Streamlit application is inside this file called app.py. And to run it, you're going to hit Streamlit run app.py. Now, this is going to open up the Streamlit application, and I have it in such a way that you can now create a list of prompts. So I've already have a couple just preset, but you can add anything, just like blue sky. And you can remove any of the prompts that were previously set. And then here, you're going to be able to upload the image, which is going to be the QR code. Once you upload the image, it is then going to show you all of those parameters that I just went over, such as the sampling steps. So we're going to keep that at 20, the control weight, and the starting and ending control steps. I also have it set so that if you have a comma, such as to 1 and 1.5, it will then create for each prompt and each combination of these steps, it's going to have a unique image. And then we're just going to have a single prompt. I'm going to set the starting steps for it to be 20, and then I'm going to set the control weight to be 1 and 1.5. And then since I hit start processing, it'll be now saved to the images/project exactly folder. So based on those settings of the control weight being 1 and 1.5, and there being a single prompt, New York City skyline, it generated 2 images, with one of them having the weight set to 1 and the other having the weight set to 1.5. This is just a really fun, quick app to just show you, one, how to use the ControlNet Stable Diffusion API to generate these images automatically. And in this sense, I'm using it to just generate different combinations of the parameters and prompts so that you can get an image that best looks like what you're trying to create. So I encourage you to check out this app. The front end is in the app.py, and the API call is being created in the controlnet.py file. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Please place any questions in the comments down below, and be sure to like and subscribe. Thank you.